Well, hello. Thanks for joining again. This is Myron with the Chamberlain Group at Prime Lending. And what I wanted to talk about today is the concept of condominium investing or owning. Many times I'll have clients approach me and they love the turnkey concept of a condo where they can go in, purchase it, they can leave, they can lock the door and leave. They never have to worry about maintenance. When purchasing a condo, there are some very important things to keep in mind that a lot of clients don't initially consider at first glance. What those are is a condominium is a collection of units where you own the unit itself. It's called from the drywall in, you own it, and you own a certain percentage of the overall common areas. So for example, if there was a condominium with 300 units, you would own your unit and then 1/300th of the common area. So it's called collective ownership. Now, anytime there's collective ownership, there is certain concerns that can come up as a lender or certain requirements that you as the borrower have to go through specifically for that condominium. And what I wanted to do today is talk about what those requirements are. So as you're out shopping for a home and you're looking at condominiums, you know what to be on the lookout for along with your real estate agent. And then secondly, I also wanted to break down an HOA. Many times clients say, I love to buy a condo, I just don't want to pay an HOA because it's going to be $200, $300, $400. I've seen them all the way up to $1,000 a month. And you feel like it's just an expense and you're throwing money away as a result of it. So I want to talk on what the requirements are to be concerned about when buying a condominium. And then number two, let's break down an HOA and find out, is it more expensive or is it not? In discussing the requirements for a condominium, there is a total of 6 that I want to touch on today. So the first is what is called a 15% delinquency on HOA dues. What that means is that if you have 100 people who own a certain condo complex, we as the lender and you as the borrower want to make sure that everybody is pitching in and paying for the HOA dues. If you have half the people that say, I can't afford it, I'm not going to pay my dues, well, the community still has to pay for a pool, they still have to pay for landscaping, they still have to pay for new asphalt, they still have to pay for painting. All of the expenses are still there, but you don't have everybody from the community coming around and pitching in and paying for the expenses. So when you're buying a condo, 85% of people that live there and call it home have to be paying the HOA dues on time. So that's concept number one. Number two is they're going to want to make sure there's no significant deferred maintenance on the project. When the condominium collapsed last year in Florida, condo requirements changed across the board for every lender all across the country. They're now wanting to make sure that structurally it's a sound unit, that there's no deferred maintenance, and so the HOA is going to answer a question if there's any known or deferred maintenance in a project. The third is what's called a 10% budget. Now this is where we see most condominiums fail. What that is a condominium is going to have a budget. Every year it gets approved by the board members and by all of the residents. And that's going to project what the total revenue is for the HOA dues each month, and then also what the expenses are. They want to make sure that the budget is not being used every month and that HOA is setting money aside in a responsible way for all of those expenses that they are responsible for. So an HOA is required to put away 10% of the overall monthly assessments into a savings account or what they call a reserve account every single month. The fourth point that I want to talk about is litigation. And that is probably the most common issue that comes up when we as a lender are reviewing a condominium for our clients. Now, litigation is where the HOA is a party to a lawsuit. And this comes up probably 1 in every 15 condominium complexes that we've seen. In fact, just today I was looking at one where there was a leaky roof, water came in and it damaged the borrower's unit. So she sued the HOA saying, you had a responsibility to keep the roof in check, you didn't, and now my unit is damaged. And so when there is litigation, it does not mean you cannot lend in the project, but as the lender, we will be more cautious to examine what the complaint is and if the HOA is going to have a high responsibility to pay out that claim. The fifth item is going to be what's called insurance. Now, by insurance, what I mean is an HOA is going to have the responsibility to carry insurance on the project on anything outside of the drywalls. And that insurance is going to be maintained and paid for by the HOA. Every year, the HOA is going to renew that insurance, and the insurance has to have enough coverage to replace the total condo if it were to burn down. And it also has to have what is called fidelity coverage. What fidelity insurance is it replenishes the reserve account for the HOA if one of the HOA board members, if one of the HOA presidents were to write himself a check and clear out the HOA bank account. This insurance is going to replace everybody's money back into that account so they can continue to make their payments and their bills. And so it's called fidelity coverage. Every HOA that is more than 20 units is required to cover it. The sixth piece that I want to talk about is occupancy. What that means is, how are the units in the HOA being occupied? They can either be occupied as a primary residence, as a secondary residence, or as an investment property. If you're buying the home as a primary residence or a second home, chances are we as the lender aren't going to check as to what the total occupancy is of the unit. If you're buying it with an FHA loan or as an investment property, they're going to want to make sure that at least 50% of the units in the total project are owned by people that are using it as a vacation home or a secondary home. If a project is going to be more than 50% investors, that's going to mean it's more than 50% rentals. As you're living there, it'll feel more like a rental apartment than it will a condominium that you own and have pride of ownership in. So the occupancy ratio is very important if you are purchasing the unit as an investment or with an FHA loan. On a conventional loan, you don't really have to worry about the occupancy ratios if you're buying it to live in or as a vacation home.